Welcome, dear friends, to a poignant tale of broken promises, unconditional love, and the true meaning of family. Enjoy the story. The bus wound through rolling Tennessee farmland, each mile taking David Parker further from his carefully constructed city life and closer to the past he had tried so hard to escape. Beside him, 6-year-old Bella pressed her face against the window, her eyes wide at the sight of endless cornfields and grazing cattle. "Daddy, are there really chickens at Grandma's house?" she asked, her small voice full of wonder. "Like in my storybooks?" David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding his daughter's eager gaze. "Yes, sweetie. Grandma Margaret has chickens in a garden," he replied, his voice trailing off as memories of the home he had desperately left behind 15 years ago resurfaced. "Will Mommy come visit us there?" The question he had been dreading. David pretended to be absorbed in checking their bags, but Bella's reflection in the window revealed her watchful, expectant gaze. She had Claire's eyes, large, hazel, and impossible to lie to. "We'll see, honey. Mommy needs some time." Time. That's what Claire had said 3 months ago as she packed her designer suitcase, barely glancing at their daughter playing in the next room. "I need time, David. Space. This isn't the life I was meant for." The memory twisted in his gut like a knife. He should have seen it coming. Claire had always been restless, always searching for something bigger, better, and more exciting than what she had. It was what had attracted him to her in the first place. Her ambition, her dreams, her grandeur. They had met in college. Claire, the ambitious fashion design student, and David working toward a business degree he didn't even want. Claire had been the most beautiful girl on campus, destined for bigger things. When she agreed to date him, he couldn't believe his luck. When she married him, he felt like he had won the lottery. But the fairy tale didn't last. "I've met someone," she had announced one morning, applying her perfect lipstick in their bathroom mirror. "Someone who understands me. Someone who can give me the life I deserve." "And what about the life Bella deserves?" David had asked, but Claire had already swept past him, leaving only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume. The bus hit a pothole, jolting David back to the present. Bella had fallen asleep, her head resting against his arm. She looked so small, so vulnerable. He had tried to manage these past months, juggling his factory job with childcare, attempting to keep their lives together. But last week's warning from his supervisor made it clear something had to give. "Your performance is slipping, David," Mr. Jenkins had said, not unkindly. "Get your personal life sorted, or we'll have to make some changes." And so here he was, returning to his mother's farm with his tail between his legs. Margaret Parker had never approved of Claire, seeing through her glamorous facade from the start. "That girl's got running shoes on her soul," she'd warned. David hadn't listened. The bus turned onto a familiar gravel road, and his heart began to race. How would his mother react to their unexpected arrival? More importantly, how would she react to what he was about to ask? Margaret Parker stood at her gate like a sentinel, her dark eyes taking in every detail of their arrival. "Well," she said as they approached, "looks like the prodigal son finally remembered the way home." Her stern expression softened as she knelt to Bella's level. "And you must be my granddaughter. Aren't you the prettiest little thing?" Bella, usually shy, stepped forward. "Are you really my grandma? Daddy says you have chickens." Margaret laughed, a warm, rich sound. "Chickens and a cow named Bessie, and the meanest old tomcat you've ever seen, though he's really just a big softy." David watched the interaction with a mixture of relief and apprehension. His mother's property looked exactly as he remembered. The white farmhouse with its wraparound porch, the carefully tended flower beds, the vegetable garden stretching toward the barn. Even the old oak tree still bore the remnants of his childhood swing. "How did you know we were coming?" he asked as they walked toward the house. Margaret's knowing look made him feel like a teenager again. A mother always knows when her children need her, though some wait until they're desperate to admit it. Inside, the house smelled of fresh-baked bread and coffee. Margaret had already set the table for 3, with David's favorite childhood mug sitting at his place. He had to swallow hard against the sudden lump in his throat. "Bella, why don't you go wash up?" Margaret suggested. "The bathroom's through that door, and I believe there might be some chocolate chip cookies cooling on the counter." Once Bella was out of earshot, Margaret turned to her son. So Claire finally did what Claire was always going to do. It wasn't a question. David sank into a chair. You don't have to say I told you so, Mom. Would it make any difference if I did? She replied, pouring coffee with her usual efficiency. That girl was born with one foot out the door. The only surprise is that she stayed as long as she did. David sighed. She found someone else, someone more exciting than a factory worker with a mortgage. Margaret stilled, her hands gripping the coffee pot. And Bella? She barely said goodbye, David admitted, bitterness creeping into his voice. She just packed her bags and left, like she was heading off for a weekend spa trip. Margaret's sharp gaze softened. You want me to take Bella? Just for the summer, David said quickly, until I can get things sorted out. Margaret's eyes narrowed. And then? You run back to Claire the moment she snaps her fingers? Don't bother denying it. I see it all over your face. David opened his mouth to argue, but closed it when he saw the truth reflected in his mother's expression. Yes, Margaret said after a pause. Bella can stay. That child deserves at least one stable adult in her life. Relief flooded through David, followed quickly by shame. He knew his mother was right. He was already thinking about Claire, about the soft promises she had made last week. Just remember this, Margaret said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. Children's hearts are more fragile than china, and a lot harder to mend once they're broken. Order turned to chaos as Bella struggled to keep things clean and bright again. Each payment she earned went straight to Margaret's medicine fund, carefully tracked in a notebook Bella kept hidden under her mattress. You're working too hard, Margaret would often say, watching her granddaughter study late into the night after returning from her jobs. I'm fine, Bella would insist. Besides, hard work runs in the family, right? Bella developed a routine, moving efficiently through her client list. Most clients never saw her. They left keys and instructions, allowing her to complete her work unnoticed. That fateful Tuesday, she didn't think twice about entering the elegant apartment on Pine Street when no one answered her knock. The sound of running water from the bathroom suggested the client was home, but occupied. Start cleaning, a woman's voice called out. I'll be out shortly. Bella began her usual routine, dusting the elaborate mantelpiece adorned with framed photos. As she worked, she froze. There it was, her own face smiling out from a silver frame draped in black ribbon. Her hands shook as she picked up the frame. It was a school photo from years ago, one she'd given her father, hoping he'd want it. Why was it here? And why was it? Oh, that's my daughter, came a familiar voice behind her. She died tragically young. Bella turned slowly to face her mother for the first time in nearly a decade. Claire looked exactly as she remembered, perfectly groomed, expertly made up, not a hair out of place. But her expression shifted, grief, shock, and then something harder to define. The front door opened and David walked in. Claire, honey, I brought the... His voice trailed off as he saw the scene before him. What's going on? He asked, though his face suggested he already knew. Ask Mom, Bella said, her voice surprisingly steady. Ask her why she's telling people I'm dead. Claire recovered first, her perfect mask sliding back into place. Really, darling? What else was I supposed to say? It's so much easier than explaining the messy truth. Messy truth? Bella's voice trembled. You mean the truth that you abandoned your 6-year-old daughter? That you visited once in 10 years? That truth? David stepped forward, his face ashen. Bella, sweetheart, don't you dare sweetheart me, Bella snapped. Did you know about this? About her telling people I was dead? The guilt on his face was answer enough. Claire sighed dramatically, examining her manicured nails. It's really for the best, you know. My friends, our social circle, they wouldn't understand the real situation. This way I get sympathy instead of judgment. It's really quite practical. Practical? The word hit Bella like a physical blow. She looked around the expensive apartment, the designer furniture, the art on the walls, all the trappings of the life Claire had chosen. Practical, she repeated, her voice heavy with bitterness. Is that what you tell yourself at night? That it was practical to throw away your child? That's not fair, David began, but Claire cut him off. Oh, let's be honest for once, David. We were never cut out to be parents. You know it. I know it. At least I had the courage to admit it. Bella felt something inside her shatter, not her heart, which had broken long ago, but the last fragile thread of hope she'd been clinging to. Courage, she laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Is that what you call it? Her voice rose with emotion. You know why I'm here cleaning houses? Because Grandma's sick. Because she needs medicine we can barely afford. Because the woman who had the courage to raise me when you two couldn't be bothered is the only real parent I've ever had. She pulled off her cleaning apron and threw it onto the spotless floor. Keep your memorial photo. As far as I'm concerned, you're both dead to me anyway. The drive back to the farm was a blur. Bella couldn't remember getting into her car or the 2-hour journey. She just found herself suddenly in her grandmother's kitchen, collapsing into Margaret's arms. They've been telling people I'm dead, she sobbed. Mom's been showing my picture, telling everyone her daughter died tragically. And Dad just went along with it. Margaret held her granddaughter tightly, her own tears falling silently. Oh, my sweet girl, my precious girl. Why, Grandma? Bella whispered. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Listen to me, Margaret said fiercely. You did nothing wrong, nothing. Some people just aren't capable of real love. They're so focused on themselves they can't see the treasure right in front of them. Late that evening, they heard the sound of a car pulling up. Margaret had finally coaxed Bella into eating some soup, though her hands still shook as she held the spoon. Through the kitchen window, they watched David emerge from a taxi, looking older and more defeated than ever. He carried a large suitcase, his movements uncertain as he approached the house. Margaret met him at the door before he could knock. If you're here to make excuses for that woman, she began, but David shook his head. No, Mom, no more excuses. His voice cracked. I think I finally see things clearly, maybe for the first time in 20 years. He looked past her to where Bella sat at the kitchen table, her face tear-stained but composed. Can I come in, please? I need to say something to my daughter. Margaret studied him for a long moment, then stepped aside. David entered slowly, setting his suitcase by the door like a man preparing to stay, or be thrown out. Bella, he began, then stopped, struggling for words. I know I'm sorry isn't enough. I know nothing I can say will make up for everything. But I want you to know that what happened today opened my eyes. Did it? Bella's voice was quiet. Or did you just realize you couldn't pretend anymore? Both, maybe. He sank into a chair, looking smaller somehow. Watching Claire dismiss you like that, hearing her talk about you like you were just an inconvenience, I saw myself through your eyes. I saw what a coward I've been. Bella's laugh was bitter. Is that what we're calling it now? Yes. David's directness surprised them both. I've been a coward, weak, so desperate for Claire's approval that I let her poison everything good in my life, including my relationship with my beautiful, brave, incredible daughter. He pulled a worn piece of paper from his pocket. Do you remember this? You sent it to me before your 8th grade graduation. Asked me to come. Bella's face flushed. You said you had an important business meeting? I didn't. David's voice broke. I was taking Claire to a spa weekend. She said it would help our relationship if I proved she was my priority. He stared at the crumpled invitation. I've kept this in my wallet ever since. A reminder of one of the 1,000 moments I failed you. Why are you telling me this now? Bella asked. Because I'm done failing you. Done choosing Claire over my own child. Done being a coward. He met her eyes. I know I don't deserve another chance, but if you'll let me, I want to try to be the father you should have had all along. Margaret watched from the corner of the kitchen, missing nothing. She saw the trembling in Bella's hands, the desperate hope behind David's carefully chosen words, and the weight of years of hurt hanging between them. How do I know? Bella finally asked, her voice small. How do I know this isn't just another promise you'll break when she calls? She already did call, David admitted. Right after you left, said we could fix everything if I just explained why her story was necessary. His voice grew steadier. That's when I finally saw it, what she's always been and what I've let myself become. He reached for his suitcase and pulled out papers. I filed for divorce this afternoon, cleaned out our joint accounts, only my salary anyway since Claire never worked, and bought a one-way taxi ride here. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay, help with the farm, be here for you and Mom. Margaret stepped forward. And when she calls again, when she needs something, I'll remember today, David said firmly. I'll remember my daughter finding out her own mother killed her off for social convenience. I'll remember how I've spent 15 years chasing a fantasy while the real treasure was right here. He turned to Bella. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to earn it. Bella sat silent for a long moment, absently stroking the old kitchen table. Finally, she stood and walked to her father. For a heartbeat, they all held their breath. Then she wrapped her arms around him and David broke down completely, holding his daughter like he'd never let go again. Thank you, he whispered through his tears. Thank